Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wisdom and the Tangents podcast. I am your host, John Mansfield. Today we're breaking down your top favorite, most beloved episodes of 2024. I do this every year. I love just kind of looking back. This is fun for me too, to just like go through some of these conversations that I had nearly a year ago for some of these. So the way that this works is I because of release times and everything, this is going to be looking at any episode that aired from December of 2023 all the way through November of 2024, and then getting your favorites, your most loved. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is actually a great one for you to start with because I'm going to have little clips and snippets from these episodes. So you get to have a good taste of what this podcast is about and the conversations that we have. And if you've been around for a while, maybe you've listened to all of the episodes of 2024, this is also really fun. This was fun for me to go back and listen to them as well. I'm going to try and do less banter than I normally do and just get y'all into these episodes. So episode number 5, your 5th most loved episode of the year, it aired back in January of 2024. So one of the very first ones available. And this was... Real quick, I know I said I'm going to cut the banter, but this is important, I think. In this year, I wanted to bring in more guests than just photographers. I know this is a photography-centered podcast. I am a wedding photographer. I have a lot of wedding photographer friends and people that I have connections with that I can bring on the show pretty easily, and I have, and that is most everyone who's on the show. But I wanted to really reach out to more people and bring in some professionals that aren't necessarily in our niche in our industry, but that we can still take some really great information from and grow as people, grow as business owners, grow as just people who interact with other people. So I loved that this was in the top 5 too, because this was one of my favorite episodes, is with Mallorie Rodgers, who is a licensed therapist. And we talked about navigating the world, which is set up for more neurotypical minds, as someone who is neurodivergent. And if you don't know what neurodivergent or neurotypical is, we get into that in the episode, but just kind of break that down for you so we can get into the clip. A neurodivergent mind is not like the standards. It's not typical. Your brain chemistry is a little bit different. I am not the professional. I realize as I'm like trying to explain this. Mallory's the professional. She does get into this in the full episode, but things like ADHD, OCD, autism, those are all part of the neurodivergence band of alphabet brothers. So if you have that, or if you know someone who is neurodivergent, this is a really great episode of like how we can navigate the systems and society that is set up for someone who is neurotypical. So I'm going to get into a clip from that episode, which is episode 196 with Mallorie Rodgers. With these different systems that are kind of set up for neurotypicals, what are some ways that we can navigate those, like with a neurodivergent brain?
Yeah, man, I could really dive in here for about 10 hours, so I won't do that to you or
Cool.
anyone
We've
listening,
got time. We're good. This is going to be an 11-part series.
Yeah, so stay tuned, everybody. You're going to hear my voice for the next 5 months. Yeah, if I was going to kind of choose one, and thinking of kind of like, the listeners that might be here, I thought about kind of diving into like workplace. And that one is so cool that this is, a podcast specific to like entrepreneurs and creatives, because that is really where a lot of neurodivergent, not all of them, will thrive, is where they have that space to make it what they need it to be. I love that,
Yeah.
you've clearly done that, like, for yourself. And again, not all of them. We kind of have this phrase in this world of, you've met one neurodivergent brain is one neurodivergent brain. Like, they could be completely different, have completely different needs.
Oh yeah.
So some of them would really thrive in corporate, right? Like the structure of that and the expectations of that. But that's one where I think I work a lot with people to try and, like, find a way to make this, like, work well for them, whatever they've found. A lot of them, they end up finding, like, maybe they work best in a smaller work environment, but if they work for themselves, it's a nightmare because they need some sort of external structure. If they have to do that themselves, it's like, or they need a virtual assistant, or they find that they work better for a boss who has certain characteristics. They need a certain sensory environment. Like, there's just so much that you can kind of adapt in there. And it really does require you kind of to stop and pause and tune into what you need before you can really adjust any of that, to kind of identify, like, what's working, what's not working. Thinking of entrepreneurs specifically, like my client base, like, are these the kind of people that work well with my schedule, or, how I work, that kind of stuff. If you are the boss in a workplace too, or you are running a business and you have people working for you, like, we kind of talked a little bit more about what it's like when you're the person working for someone else or working for yourself. But when you're working for someone else too, like, that's a whole thing as well. Maybe they're neurotypical and so they don't get it, or maybe you're neurotypical and they're neurodivergent and you're having a hard time, like, understanding where they're coming from. So it's nice to kind of be able to take that beat and that pause of, like, there may be other reasons why they're thinking this way, and not quite jump to, like, an assumption of why, or, whatever. But yeah, it can make a big difference if people are aware of that and then can make space for it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point, because I know that not everyone listening to this is neurodivergent. There's a lot of neurotypicals out there that run their own businesses and listen to this podcast. And, I have no idea where I land on this spectrum. I've never been, like, clinically diagnosed or anything. I should, though. I've been talking about going to therapy for years and just have never taken the time to do that. It is a difficult thing for me to put myself first. But yeah, it's something that, like, I might be neurotypical, but it's something that I'm very interested in, because kind of like we were talking about, like the TikTok things of the clear organizers for your fridge. That's still very helpful for me. Even if I am neurotypical, that's still very helpful for me to be able to see everything quickly, and to have, like, oh, all the cheeses go in this one over here. So we're not going to have, like, Parmesan up here, and then we got cheddar down over here. It's like, I know where everything is. I know where the kids' snacks are, and all of that. And it's just, it's helpful all around. But yeah. Okay. So what are some other things that we can do, kind of navigating these systems, or ways that we can maybe even implement those into like day life, work life?
Again, there's just so many things that come to mind, but if I was going to pick a couple, a big one is oftentimes schedule. Like, and here's where it comes in of, like, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, pay attention to this, but it's, am I more of, like, a early bird, or am I more of, like, a night owl? And can I make my work day flow like that? Like, I am married to someone, I mean, he can work, he comes alive at 11 p.m. I cannot, barely can function past about 9:30. Don't ask my brain to do anything productive past, like, 9:30 p.m. But he will come alive and can stay awake until 3 a.m. And that's when he, like, gets the most stuff done. He's so productive. The house is quiet, like, that whole thing. So we've kind of structured our lives that way, where he can do that.
It is funny that y'all, like, found each other, because that's typically what happens, is, like, the early bird and the night owl end up partnering, and then it's just like, okay, we can't do this together all day, every day. And my wife and I are also the same, where
it's so funny.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Works out well raising kids, because it's like, okay, then I can get up and you're available or whatever. But part of that, it was like, I just don't see you. Like, is this really working? But it has. It's worked out great. But that's a good example of, like, look at your schedule, whether you're working, you know, you're living with a partner or not, like, when, you know, are you most productive, but also when do you enjoy
Hmm.
the day the most? Like I am an early bird, but I've also learned like if I can start my day, I don't start most of my days before 10 a.m. because I love mornings. So I like
Yeah.
enjoy my morning, you know, I hang out with my kid and we have breakfast and we go on walks and whatever. And like I love, and then I get started. Most of my clients don't really want to see me and talk about their feelings prior to 10 a.m. anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Um, which I
Like,
get.
I still need 3 more cups of coffee before I can open
Yeah.
up to you. I'm sorry.
If any of them have ever tried to do like an 8 or 9 a.m. session, they're like, okay, so then she
Yeah.
said, and I'm like, right,
Uh,
okay, maybe we maybe we don't do 9 a.m. again.
no.
Um, so yeah, scheduling's a big thing. Looking at like systems that you need in place, especially as an entrepreneur, someone who's running your own business, like you have a lot of irons in the fire usually if you're doing most of that, if not all of that by yourself. So like finding different things, using Asana or Notion or like whatever the, you know, like system might be
Hmm.
that helps you keep organized with like different tasks and stuff. Cause it's like, I want to give you lots and lots of space to not like shame yourself if you don't get stuff done. And at the end of the day, if you're relying on your business to like put food on the table, we also have to get some things done. And so like how do we find a spot that like meets in the middle of that like accountability with also that like self-compassion and that freedom. Um, so scheduling is a big part of that. Productivity is a big part of that. Email, like communication, what strategies do you have your inbox so that it's not just like a free for all in there,
Yeah.
where you can kind of keep things organized, kind of some ideas there.
Yeah. Keep it organized, and also the boundaries of like not jumping in your inbox at 11 p.m. because you're like,
Yep.
oh, I saw this email come in and I need to get back. It's like setting those boundaries of office hours, and also
Mm-hmm.
letting your clients know like these are my office hours. And every now and then, sure, like if it's an emergency or something, I'm like I really do need to get back to this.
Yeah.
Or if I've got one of those 11 p.m., I've got a fire lit underneath me and I'm just ready to work, like I'll answer a bunch of emails and then I'll just hit schedule for 8 a.m.
Schedule
and
send. Oh, she's the
schedule
best
send.
friend. Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
good. Because then
Yeah.
you can work whenever you want to, and it still looks like you're working in office hours. So people aren't going to be like, well, I received that email from you at,
Right.
12:15 the other night. So you should be up. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, you mentioned something and I pinned it in my head and then it fell off the wall. I don't remember what it was now, but I was like, oh, I need to bring this back. If it comes back,
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Just
But
shout it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
you had mentioned, oh, there we go, it's back. I just
Yay.
had to look around. Uh, but you had mentioned that like keeping in mind like when do you work the best, like when are you
Mhm.
motivated, because I'm the same as you, like
Yeah.
I'm not super motivated before 10 a.m. I do enjoy mornings, so I don't want to just like wake up at 6 and then dive straight into work at 6:30.
Mhm.
It's like, I mean, I also can't because I have to get the kids ready and dressed
Yeah.
and taken to school and all of that too. But still, like I got home this morning 8:30 after dropping off everyone, and I made myself a nice breakfast and made some
Hmm.
coffee and sat there and
Yeah.
scrolled a little bit and just
Yeah. It's
had
you time.
some me time, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to just like dive straight into work. And I think that's a really great thing to really assess about yourself is when do you work the most efficiently? Because
Hmm.
for some people, it might be in the evening, and maybe you need to
Right.
structure your day that way. And some people, it may be you work really great between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And
Hmm.
you just like that's your power hours, and that's
Hmm.
when you're gonna schedule all the like hard things or like the long things that you really gotta, all the photo editing. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
cool, I'm gonna power through this when I have that motivation.
Yeah. And that's something that, you know, a lot of people sometimes will say of like, well, I just feel like my body is shutting down at 3 p.m., but that's not working. Like, how do I get my body to wake up at 3 p.m.?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, well, why do you need it to work at 3 p.m.? Is it because you actually do? Like, you have to go pick up your kids, so you like can't take a nap then? Or, you know, or like you have to have this meeting because you work a 9 to 5? Or is it that you've just, maybe you do have a flexible schedule, but you've kind of just like been programmed to think that you have to be productive at 3 p.m. or you have to, during these certain hours, this is
Mm-hmm.
what you have to do. Like, are you actually pigeonholing yourself? And then you're just in this cycle of like shaming yourself all day of like, well, I didn't, oh gosh, I like wasn't productive, at 9 a.m. when I got home from dropping off the kids. And what's wrong with me? Everyone else is productive at 9 a.m. That's when most people start their work day. Like, why can't I
Right.
be like most people? What's wrong? And it just snowballs. And now it's like 2 p.m. You've got nothing done and you feel horrible about yourself versus knowing that maybe I do great in the afternoon. So if I could just give myself the freedom to live my life until 2 and start my work day then, like, does that work with my lifestyle? We have to consider that. But then too, like, can I give myself a little bit of that freedom instead of like being in this like internal monologue of like shame all day long? So it really is powerful, to kind of take that step back and look at like, what do I need? And can I make that happen at all? Even give myself, an inch of space there.
And that was your number 5 episode in the most loved episodes of 2024. I really love that one. If you want to listen to the whole thing, obviously it is there, 196. You can go listen to the whole conversation with Mallorie Rodgers. And now, as we're making our way down, we're getting closer to 1. Today's episode, we're going through 5, 4, and 3. And number 4 is another episode that I thought would be very, very beneficial, especially for anyone in the first couple years of a photography business, especially if you're wanting to get into weddings. I had my friend Emily Wisch come on the show and talk about what it's like to be an amazing second photographer and how you can set yourself up to be an amazing second photographer, as well as how to book second photography jobs and just make it really easy for the primary photographers, the lead shooters, to view your portfolio, your gear list, your experience, all of that all together and just be like, oh yeah, Emily, great. Yes, she's good. Let's move forward with this. So great episode. This one aired in April of 2024. Episode 211, which is the most recent episode out of all the top 5. A lot of them were like toward the beginning of the year, which is pretty cool. I think we had some great guests on. Really, I think we had some great guests on all year round. A lot of the episode downloads and everything are pretty close to each other. But yeah, I love that that Emily and I are like in-person friends. We've worked together before. I believe we had worked together at the time of this recording. I know that we definitely have a couple times since then. But yeah, if you are wanting to get into the wedding industry, if you're wanting to second shoot, even as an associate doing like family photography or product photography or something like that, where you're going to be working for somebody else, this is a really great episode. Let's get into this clip from Emily Wisch's episode about second shooting. Could you give us a little story? I know you've talked to me off camera whenever we were photographing a wedding together about your whole like journey in second shooting and all of that. Could you give us a little story time about like how you started that and just like how you really built a second photographer kind of business where you were very busy? Because I get that from a lot of people of like, I want to get into the wedding business, but I don't know how to reach out to people to second shoot. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so my story is kind of one of the phoenix rises from the ashes, and it really starts with a heartbreak. In 2021, also for reference, I had officially started my business in 2019. I was teaching at the time, and the year before that, I had worked in corporate for a year. I had been in teaching for 2 years, and I was like, if there's something else that I want to try, I'm going to try it now. So I went into the corporate world and I was there like social media manager and a digital marketing specialist. And I did that for a year. And then a spot at my old alma mater school showed up for teaching. So I went back there. This all has a point, I promise you. We love tangents.
Oh yeah, I'm wrapped in the story already, so we're good.
Yeah. So 2018, I go back to teaching, and I thought I was like invigorated. I was like, yes, I'm gonna keep doing this. I had started my photography business while I was in corporate. I was like, I love teaching, and I was like, I love working with kids and like helping them, and it was so much more fulfilling than working at corporate. And I go, I'm gonna go back to teaching until I can take my photography business full time. And in the year, like that fall of 2019, I was like, this isn't it. I was like, you're really miserable. And I was like, I think you should just go full time. And I was like, just do it. And then the pandemic happened, and then we really didn't have to go back. So I launched it full time, and I was also just taking kind of like odd, not like they weren't in the wedding industry per se. Like I was their in-house photographer for a mortgage company. So I worked with a lot of realtors there. So long story short, and like 2020 and 2021 was really when my relationship, we were together for 5 years. It really started to dwindle. And we lived in that house together. It was my house. I had purchased it. And in 2021, I really just needed to cut ties. And I really wanted to stay in Houston because those were my roots. That's where I was getting referrals. My business was picking up. But at the same time, I was like, I couldn't live in that house anymore. And so when I had sold it, I paid off all of my student loans. So yeah, I got profits from that house, but I immediately paid off student loans and kind of started from ground zero again. And not also did I start from ground zero, but I moved from where I started my business. I moved back into with my parents. They are in a small little town right in between Austin and right in between Houston. And I had this dream of becoming a destination wedding photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, you have to have portfolio work. And I was like, and I was like, we're just going to do it as we go. Everything's going to be fine. And at the end of 2021, I had my website on Squarespace. And I was thinking to myself, and I was like, there are weddings being booked right now. I may not be getting those inquiries, but other photographers are. And at that point too, when I had moved in with my parents, and so I didn't have a mortgage anymore. You know, I paid off my student loans, so I didn't have those. So my expenses were relatively low, and my heart was still so just completely broken. I also didn't want to market for inquiries either, because I was like, who wants to come to a client? Like, I'm like sobbing. You don't want me to photograph your wedding? Like, no. So I was like, but I could second shoot. So that's when in 2021, I built that landing page on my website. It was like a resume style page. Cause you've seen like the Facebook groups and everything like, oh, I need a second shooter. And so everyone will just post a photo. So on that page, I had put like all of my gear, my equipment, my experience, and portfolio links. And that's what I would post in the comments. And I started getting a lot of feedback. And then at the end of 2021, I just got so delusional, and I was like, I'm going to start like very Gary V. I think you're into Gary V too.
Oh yeah, love Gary V.
I started my own Excel sheet, and I actually calculated how many emails I had sent out. In the past 2 years, I sent out 188 emails. I looked on Google and I looked on Instagram for like Austin wedding photographers, you know, like Houston wedding photographers, and just saw who came up. And I would email them, you know, and say, you know, hi, my name is Emily. I think your work is really great. I was curious if you're looking to add a second shooter to your team. This is a resume page that I created with like stats, gear, portfolio. If you think we'd be a good fit, please let me know. I'd love to work with you. Hope you're having a good day. And with that, I completely booked out my 2022, and I stayed completely debt free. I mean, yeah, again, I was taking on probably maybe 4. Actually, that's not true. I would say like even with the leads that I had, I still had maybe like 4 to 6. And in busy season, I'd have like sometimes 8 to even 12 like second shooting gigs. But that was my 2022. And then I know that this was a long tangent, but to go and to say that like leading forward now in 2023, I started associate shooting at the end of the year. And then I've had so many people, when I send them that website, they're like, Emily, your website is amazing. Who created it? And I was like, I did. So now in the fall, I started my like web design business, and I'm actually really trying to help like other people who are on this road as well, create that like digital home, so that even like, you don't necessarily even have to be a photographer, but like any like virtual assistant, right? anything that you're trying to get information and your services on a page. So that was a long-winded to say that was for second shooting. But I will say too, like there were photographers who, like, some of them I only worked with a handful of times. And then there were photographers who, like, they continuously put me on their schedule too. So
I've got to say that landing page that like the portfolio and had all the gear and some of your work and just like had a lot of your personality in there too, that really sold me on hiring you, because it was so different than everyone else who's just like, in the Facebook groups, just like, oh, I shoot Canon, so here.
Yeah.
And this was like, okay. And then there's like a link to their Instagram page. And then, seeing that page that you had put together, I was like, oh, like Emily's a professional. Like I know, like, just from this, I can trust that she's going to be great. And you were, and it was great. And like that kind of, I see a lot of the same people in Facebook groups often, just like jumping on there whenever people are needing second shooters and just being like, oh, hey, here's my gear list or whatever. And you might have like that saved as a note or something on your phone where you can just like copy it and drop it in there. But having an automation kind of thing, not really an automation, but where you're not having to send them like a portfolio link, you're not having to send out all your gear list, you're not having to send out anything like that over and over again. It's just like all in one place, just put it together one time, and then it's so much easier and well put together. Like those kind of things just make life so much easier, doing all that. So yeah, I really loved that page.
I appreciate it. And I think that also comes from my background of being an educator. Like I am used to having 35 12-year-olds that I have to teach math to. So knowing that like I need a single page to send. So I appreciate that. That.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I find that like, I love how like outside the industry life like weaves in a lot with our, like how we run our business. And I have found that like so many, like high school teachers, middle school teachers are so well organized, with everything. Like there's, another podcaster friend, Leila Mahdi, who now has her own conference and everything where she teaches and brings in other conference speakers. She was I think a high school dance teacher. I know she was a dance teacher. Don't remember if it was high school or not, but like talking to her about everything, it was just like, oh, this is so well organized, because you have to be, with like keeping track of so many students. And it's just, I don't know. I think that it's great that, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we kind of like sever ties with our past lives and our like corporate job and everything. Like, oh no, I am leaving all of that over there. But sometimes like bringing in that kind of stuff into your entrepreneurial business can be super beneficial, just like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, taking away, there's something to learn from every experience. So absolutely. I'll tell you the experience of like, I'm the youngest of 3. So I have 2 older sisters. And I just remember like on their wedding day, and this was also like 10 years ago, right? My sisters got married in 2011. I just remember that like the photographers seemed so distant and they didn't seem like they were a part of the day. And they've made it seem like, oh, I'm just there to get the photo and then I'm done. And they weren't documenting those like fun little interactions. And again, maybe it's because they weren't a documentary photographer. But I think how you can be more than just a angle and like as a second camera is like helping tell the story throughout the day. And even John had talked about how, like, when I got there to second shoot for him, I had started doing the details of like the outside, and really just like helping again tell the story from that day and helping tell the story that those 2 individuals, like they wanted to create this experience for their guests and their family. So I just wanted to help, again, like tell that story. Another one that you can really elevate the experience overall is being really nice to the other vendors, right? You don't know who is watching you. You don't never know who's watching you. And so when you give a great experience with the other vendors as well, like complimenting the florists, if she's right there. Sorry, I've just been getting more with complimenting the florists as she's going through. And also like if the other wedding planner is having an issue, like if you're hands-free, you can help the wedding planner too. You know what I mean?
And that was your number 4 in the top 5 countdown of your most loved episodes of 2024. Emily was great. I love chatting with her. And she's got, I think she mentions it in the full episode about her newsletter. It's a really great newsletter. And like, it's always paired with like a video and some fun photography, creative stuff. But yeah, episode 211 if you want to check out that full episode with Emily Wisch. On to our last and final episode of this countdown. We're going to be coming back next week with your top 2, and this one broke the top 3. It is your 3rd most loved episode of 2024, also in the spring of 2024. This episode aired in early March 2024, and we talked about forgetting the trends and being creative with your work, creating work that speaks to you as the photographer. And my guests is double guest. My double guests were Kyle and Bianca Thompson of Oak and Iron Photography. You've probably seen their reels and TikToks. They're out of Florida. Very creative stuff. Lots of prisms, lots of double exposures, quadruple exposures, a lot of things that I don't even know how they're creating these photographs, but very creative work. I really enjoyed this conversation. They're so much fun, just exactly like they are on social media. So yeah, let's get into your number 3 episode with Kyle and Bianca Thompson.
Statistically, not everyone's going to be a personality match or not know what the heck to talk about. And I mean, I think it's like totally normal. And I think like in times where we do have like gigs where we're like that, we will always take like, I know for on the photographer side of things, like taking a 30-second or 1 minute, like, let me collect my thoughts seems like an infinite amount of time. But I feel like on the client side, like they don't care. Like it's like a lot of the times I feel our clients might think that, oh, I thought we were gonna like photograph for like Austin Powers, you know what I mean? Just like, oh yeah, give it to me, and then it stops, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna regroup and like get a new plan going. Ours is like pretty, just like we're just constantly like going. We can't sit still. But that like controlled chaos is like sort of where we like live in the pocket. But also we definitely let all of our clients know and that most of our stuff really is very simple and it's just standing there. We call them pillar people. It is the cornerstone of our business. It is foolproof. Everyone looks cool just standing there like pillars. So at least default to that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's even better for them because they're coming into it like, I'm not a model. I don't know what to do. And then you're just like, you just stand there and then I'm going to do something with you. And they're just like, for me going into a photo shoot as the person getting photos taken of, I would be like, oh yeah, I can stand. I know how to do this. I do this all the time. I've been doing this for years. Yeah. And I like that idea of like, not like forcing certain creative shots and stuff on people when you're reading it and you're like, okay, they are not feeling this, or I don't think this is going to fit for this client. Like instead of like, I got this shot list, we're going to do all of these because this is what I need to submit to this, portfolio or to make this next TikTok or something. I need this shot. So we're going to do it. But instead, like, reading them and being able to pivot a little bit.
For sure.
I think that's...
It is like, I think it's so important because
Yeah.
there's definitely times when we went in thinking just like, you know, whether you have the clients like socials and stuff and you're like, oh, this person seems very much this way. But then in person, it's like a complete 180. Like I remember years and years ago when we were trying to do more like, I feel like everyone went through this like big, like prompt based, like only type of more like directing style of photography. And we like dipped our toes in that. And then like, I remember we were like, okay, we're going to do this prompt. This one's sick. This one's, and the first thing out of the client's mouth was, oh, we did engagement photos where the photographer had me like sniffing her hair. And I thought that was so stupid. And we were just looked at each other, just like audible. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to like just stand there a few times and then we'll figure it out from there. And we're like, we got to figure out how to quickly pivot to this because this is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay,
everything usually
scratch off number 4, don't sniff the hair. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was like always those, because I had a similar deal where it was probably around that same time where it was like, whisper her favorite cereal, just like really sexy in her ear. And I was like, this is stupid, but I'm going to try it. And then I had someone that they were just like, you know, we're fine with whatever you want to do, just as long as you don't have us like whispering cereal names at each other. And I was like, yeah, no, of course we're not going to do that.
And then there's the opposite. And there's some clients that will still email us to this day of like, during any time we get our photos taken, we still say sexy vegetables. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that worked because some people, that is their like trigger word.
Yeah. I was going to go back to the whole like ideal client thing and kind of touch base on that too, of like, you know, with the luxury industry or that side of things, we can't sit here and pretend that like people who are like us also have money to spend and want these luxury things. Luxury isn't just a one-sided thing. It's not, it doesn't look like one thing, which is why like the ideal client is kind of misleading because your ideal client may be a million different things. It may not fit into this one box. People are complex as ever now. Like so many people are into so many different things. Doesn't matter what you make. It doesn't matter how much you own. You could be into anime. Kylie Jenner could be into anime. You know what I mean? Like there's such a range of personalities. So like also like getting yourself stuck in this like mindset of there's a certain person. People are all complex and different and everybody likes so many different things. So not putting people in boxes is also really helpful as well to just kind of market yourself out there and get who you want.
Do you need some water?
Yes.
You said it like you were getting emotional there.
No.
Just Bianca with the monologue here. I love it.
So sorry. I was just trying to get it out.
Yeah.
She watches Gangs of New York once and starts speaking for the little man. And it's just like, riot in the streets, the dead rabbits.
Yeah. I love that. That's like, it's so important to remember though. Like, that, you know, everyone is so different and there, you know, could be a multimillionaire out there who's just like, I am super into wrestling and I saw your videos that y'all also like wrestling. I want to work with you. And, or, you know, it could be that, you know, maybe you do love barn weddings, whoever's listening to this.
Yep.
And there are definitely some people out there who own some big ranches that can do up a big old barn wedding and, you know, afford to pay whatever you're charging. So yeah, there's not, I think that like the days of like the ideal client avatar and all of those things that we have heard for years and years, I think those days are moving away, or at least I hope they are. For me, they are.
Yeah.
I'm moving away from those where I'm not like speaking to like, this is my ideal client. I've named this client. I know where they shop and all of that. I'm just like, I want to speak to people who are like me and enjoy the things like me, because then they're going to feel more comfortable in the photo shoot if you are similar. Then, you know, if you're showing up in like suit and tie in a tux, and they're just like, oh, we were like super casual for this engagement shoot. We feel underdressed now, or vice versa.
Yeah. And I think that really just goes to like, ultimately the biggest thing is just personality.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and we've done it before where we go into a photo shoot and we're just like 100% dialed in and just so focused on the job, whether it's because we just are super focused that day or like the client had certain expectations and we're like, okay, we got to like super try like extra hard because they have very specific things that they're wanting. And we are like not talking, but we're getting banger photos. We're getting everything that they asked. And then at the end of the session, it's just like it felt like something was off there. Like we got such good photos, but there was no connection whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then we realized, oh yeah, man, we did not talk at all. And at a certain point, sometimes the client is showing up. That's half of it. It's just like, oh, I get to like be around like the photography experience and also like these people I follow online that like I was expecting like more conversation or whatever. And then there's days where it's like, the photos are going good. We're kind of in the swing of things, but we are just like getting on like a house on fire. We're just won't stop talking with the client. And those days will end. And again, photos will be solid. Might not be like the most innovative, but we definitely did what we show, a lot of the cornerstones of our photography, but like the conversation was spectacular. Just kind of friend, like feels like you're hanging out with a friend.
Yeah.
And that client almost every time is the one to leave the biggest tip. That they'll be the return client because they're like, at the end of the day, when I looked at the photos, it just reminded me of a really fun day that we had.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes you really do need to like, it's hard to like always show up. It's impossible to always be there of just like, yeah, I'm ready to go. But those days where you really are like, do get to showcase your personality with the client, dude, that's when you get those clients for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was your number 3 in the top 5 countdown of your most loved episodes of 2024. Kyle and Bianca are fantastic. I loved this whole conversation. This is the end of our part 1 of this best of. I'm going to be coming back next week with your number 2 and number 1 most loved episode of the year. If you want to listen to these full episodes, which I think you really should, they are great episodes. You can just search through or scroll back. They are definitely within a couple of thumb scrolls because they are this year. So in order, we got your number 5 was Mallorie Rodgers, where we talked about neurodivergence, and that is episode 196. And then episode number 4 was Emily Wisch, which is episode 211, your number 4 episode of the year. And we talked about how to become an amazing second shooter. And then this one was episode 203 with Oak and Iron Photography, Kyle and Bianca, Pastrami, and Sweet Baby Ray. Sweet Baby Ray, that's not it. Sweet B. Sweet Baby Ray is a barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce was not on the episode. I know, it was a missed opportunity. But Kyle and Bianca, you can listen to them, episode 203, scroll on back, and then tune back in on Monday for part 2 of the countdown of your most loved episodes of 2024 with number 2 and number 1. See you then.